What if I told you that a Christmas photo album would destroy everything I believed about my life? That one moment of looking at childhood pictures would reveal a truth so horrifying, it would tear my family apart forever. My name is Jessica. And this is the story of how Christmas morning became the day I discovered I'd been living a lie my entire life. It started with something so innocent, so normal. Family photos during the holidays. But hidden in those smiling faces was a secret that would shatter my world. Let me take you back to that morning. December 25th. The day that changed everything I thought I knew about who I was. I was 26 years old. Engaged to the love of my life, Marcus. We'd been together for 3 years. He was everything I'd ever wanted. Kind. Intelligent. Someone who truly saw me. But that morning, he would see something I'd been blind to my entire life. We were at my childhood home in Portland. The same house where I'd grown up. Where I'd spent countless Christmases opening presents under the tree. Mom had insisted we stay for the whole weekend. She wanted to get to know Marcus better before our wedding in June. She'd been so excited about showing him our family history. All those photo albums she'd meticulously organized over the years. I thought it was sweet. A mother wanting to share memories with her future son-in-law. I had no idea those memories would become evidence. Christmas morning started perfectly. Coffee and cinnamon rolls. Presents under the tree. Mom fussing over Marcus, making sure he felt welcome. Dad was in his usual spot by the fireplace, reading the newspaper and occasionally grunting approval at our conversation. My older brother Jake had driven up from Sacramento with his wife and twin boys. The house was full of laughter and chaos. Everything felt normal. Warm. Like family should be. But normality was about to be shattered forever. After breakfast, Mom disappeared into her bedroom and returned with an armload of photo albums. "I've been waiting to show these to Marcus," she said, beaming. All of Jessica's baby pictures and school photos. I groaned playfully. "Mom, you're going to embarrass me." "That's what mothers are for," she laughed, settling next to Marcus on the couch. I curled up on his other side as Mom opened the first album. It was my baby book, filled with hospital photos and first-year milestones. Marcus smiled at the pictures of me as a chubby-cheeked infant. "You were adorable," he said, squeezing my hand. "Look at this one," Mom said, pointing to a photo of me at maybe 6 months old. This was right after we brought her home from the hospital. Something flickered across Marcus's face. So brief I almost missed it. "How old was she here?" he asked quietly. 6 months exactly. I remember because it was right before her first Halloween. Marcus studied the photo more intently. His grip on my hand tightened slightly. Mom flipped to the next page. More baby photos. Me in a high chair. Me taking my first steps. With each picture, I noticed Marcus growing more tense beside me. "You okay?" I whispered. He nodded, but his jaw was clenched. His eyes were focused on the photos with laser intensity. Mom continued narrating my childhood. Birthdays. Christmases past. Family vacations. But Marcus wasn't listening to her stories anymore. He was studying every photo like he was searching for something. When we reached the school pictures, his breathing changed. Became shallow and rapid. "First grade," Mom said proudly. "Look at that gap-toothed smile." Marcus went completely still beside me. The color drained from his face. "Marcus." I touched his arm. "Are you feeling all right?" He didn't answer. He was staring at my first grade photo like he'd seen a ghost. His hands started shaking. Actually trembling. "I need some air," he said suddenly, standing up so fast he nearly knocked over Mom's coffee. "Honey, what's wrong?" I followed him toward the back door. "Just, give me a minute," he said, his voice strained. I watched through the kitchen window as he paced back and forth on the deck. His hands were running through his hair. His mouth was moving like he was talking to himself. Fear crept up my spine. I'd never seen him like this. When he finally came back inside, his eyes were red. Like he'd been crying. "Sorry," he said to my mom. "I think I ate something that didn't agree with me." But I knew Marcus. He was lying. Mom, oblivious to his distress, patted his arm sympathetically. Would you like some ginger ale, dear? Actually, could we continue looking at the photos? I'd really like to see more of Jessica's childhood. His voice was different now. Forced. Like he was trying too hard to sound normal. Mom was delighted. She pulled out another album. This one was from my elementary school years. Marcus sat back down, but his body was rigid. Coiled. Like he was preparing for something terrible. And with each page Mom turned, he grew more agitated. School plays. Soccer games. Birthday parties with neighborhood kids. Then Mom reached a section that made my blood run cold. Not because of what was in the photos, but because of Marcus's reaction to them. He grabbed my hand so hard it hurt. Don't you see it? He whispered in my ear, so quiet Mom couldn't hear. See what? I whispered back. How can you not see it? His voice was desperate. Urgent. Like he was trying to warn me about something terrible. I looked at the photos again. They seemed normal to me. Me at age 8, playing in our backyard. Me and Jake building a snowman. Marcus, you're scaring me. See what? Instead of answering, he stood up abruptly. Mrs. Coleman, could I borrow Jessica for a moment? I need to show her something. Of course, dear. Take your time. He practically dragged me into the hallway, away from my family. His hands were shaking as he pulled out his phone. I need you to look at something, he said, his voice barely controlled. And I need you to really look. Not just glance. Really study it. He scrolled through his photos and found what he was looking for. This is my sister Emma when she was 8 years old. He showed me the phone screen. It was an old photo of a little girl with blonde pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. I looked at it, confused. Okay. She looks like a sweet kid. Now look at this. He walked back into the living room and picked up Mom's photo album. Found my 8-year-old school picture. He held his phone next to it. Look again, he said urgently. Really look. I stared at both photos. His sister Emma at 8. Me at 8. And then I saw it. My heart stopped beating. The photos weren't similar. They weren't just of two blonde girls who looked alike. They were identical. Not just the same hair color or the same smile. The same face. The same nose. The same eyes. The same everything. Like they were the same person. That's impossible, I whispered. Keep looking, Marcus said grimly. I stared at the photos until my eyes burned. Looking for differences. Any small detail that would prove what I was seeing wasn't real. But there were none. My 8-year-old face was identical to his sister's 8-year-old face. This has to be some kind of coincidence, I said desperately. People can look alike. Even identical strangers exist. Marcus's expression was heartbreaking. Emma isn't a stranger, Jessica. What do you mean? He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. Emma was kidnapped when she was 6 months old. The world tilted around me. She was taken from our home in the middle of the night. No signs of forced entry. No ransom demands. She just vanished. I couldn't breathe. The police said she was probably sold to people who couldn't have children. People who wanted a baby so badly they were willing to buy one. Marcus, stop. This is crazy. You're saying my parents, look at the photos again. I did. Side by side, the resemblance was undeniable. But it was more than resemblance. It was like looking at the same photo twice. This doesn't prove anything, I said weakly. Just because we look alike doesn't mean, what's your earliest memory? He asked suddenly. What? Your earliest memory? How old were you? I thought about it. I don't know. Maybe 4 or 5. Most people don't remember much before then. Emma was 6 months old when she was taken. If someone took her and wanted to create a new identity, they'd have to wait until she was old enough to accept a new story about her past. You're suggesting my parents stole a baby? That I'm not really their daughter? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you what I see in these photos. I looked around the living room. At Mom, still going through photo albums with my nephews. At Dad, dozing in his chair. At Jake, helping his wife clean up wrapping paper. These were my parents. My family. The people who raised me. Who loved me. There has to be another explanation, I said. Marcus pulled up another photo on his phone. This one showed a woman who looked exactly like my mother. This is my mother, Sarah. Emma's biological mother. I stared at the photo. The resemblance to my mom was uncanny. But lots of people look alike. Then he showed me another photo. A man who could have been my father's twin. This is my father, David. My legs gave out. I had to sit down. The photos weren't just similar. They showed people who looked exactly like my parents. How is this possible? I whispered. I think your parents and my parents are the same people. That's insane. My parents are Robert and Linda Coleman. They've lived in Portland their whole lives. My parents are David and Sarah Mitchell. They lived in Phoenix until Emma was kidnapped. Then they disappeared too. The room was spinning. Nothing made sense. You're saying my parents stole your sister, then stole your parents' identities. I'm saying the people who raised you killed my parents and stole their daughter. I wanted to scream. To run. To pretend this conversation wasn't happening. But the photos didn't lie. Why didn't you recognize them before now? I asked desperately. I was 7 when it happened. 19 years ago. And people change. They look different. But the photos, seeing you as a child next to Emma, it all clicked. So you think I'm your sister? I don't think. I know. He showed me one more photo. Emma as a baby, lying in a crib. Then he asked Mom to see my baby pictures again. Side by side, they were identical. The same blanket. The same crib. Even the same stuffed animal in the corner. They didn't just take Emma, Marcus said quietly. They took everything. Her nursery. Her belongings. Her entire life. I was going to be sick. I need to get out of here, I said. We need to be careful. If they realize we know what? We don't know anything. This is all speculation based on old photos. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Deep down, I'd always felt different from my family. Like I didn't quite belong. Jake had Dad's eyes and Mom's stubborn chin. He looked like he belonged to them. I looked like nobody. Growing up, people always commented on how different I looked from my parents. How I must have gotten my features from some distant relative. But what if the truth was simpler? What if I looked different because they weren't my biological family? We need to leave, Marcus said. Now. Before they suspect anything. I can't just walk out on Christmas morning. My family will know something's wrong. The people in that room aren't your family. They're criminals who stole you from yours. I looked back toward the living room. Mom was laughing at something one of my nephews said. Dad was helping Jake set up a new toy. They looked like grandparents. Like people who'd spent decades building a life together. Not like murderers. I need proof, I said. Real proof. Not just photos that show resemblance. Marcus nodded. DNA test. If you're Emma, we'll have genetic markers that prove we're siblings. And if the test comes back negative, then I'll apologize for the worst case of mistaken identity in history. But we both knew what the test would show. I made an excuse about needing to run to the pharmacy for headache medicine. Marcus offered to drive me. We spent the next 3 hours at an urgent care clinic, getting DNA samples taken for emergency processing. The lab tech said results would take a week. But Marcus paid extra for a rush job. 72 hours. 3 days to find out if my entire life was a lie. We returned to my parents' house and somehow made it through the rest of Christmas. I smiled and laughed and pretended everything was normal. But inside, I was screaming. Every time Mom hugged me, I wondered if she was hugging her victim. Every time Dad called me sweetheart, I wondered if he was thinking about the daughter he'd stolen. That night, lying in my childhood bed, I stared at the ceiling and tried to remember anything from before age 4. But there was nothing. Just blank space where my earliest memories should have been. Marcus couldn't sleep either. I could hear him pacing in the guest room next door. The next morning, we left earlier than planned. I made excuses about work and wedding planning. Mom seemed disappointed but didn't push. "Drive safe, sweetheart," she said, hugging me goodbye. "I love you so much." "I love you too, Mom." The words felt like glass in my throat. The drive back to Seattle was silent. We were both lost in our own thoughts. Marcus had shown me more photos on his phone during the night. His family before Emma was taken. His parents looked happy, young, in love. After Emma disappeared, the photos stopped. What happened to them? I'd asked. They searched for Emma for 3 years. Spent every penny they had on private investigators. Dad started drinking. Mom fell apart. Where are they now? Dad died of liver failure when I was 15. Mom's in a care facility. Early onset dementia. The stress broke her mind. I thought about my parents. How they'd always been so careful about our privacy. How we'd moved frequently when I was young. How they'd never talked about their families or their past before Jake was born. How they'd always been nervous around police officers and authority figures. The signs had been there. I'd just never known how to read them. 3 days later, Marcus called me at work. "The results are in," he said. My hands started shaking. "And, can you meet me at my apartment? I don't want to do this over the phone." I left work early, claiming food poisoning. The drive to Marcus's place felt like it took hours. He was waiting for me with an envelope in his hands. "Before I open this," he said, "I need you to know that no matter what it says, I love you. That's not going to change. But if it's positive, then we'll figure it out. Together." He opened the envelope with trembling hands. Scanned the document. His face went white. "What does it say?" I whispered. He handed me the paper. Probability of sibling relationship, 99.7%. I was Emma Mitchell. I'd been living someone else's life for 25 years. I collapsed onto his couch, unable to process what this meant. "My whole life is a lie," I said. "No. Your life is your life. It's just not the life they told you about. But everything, my childhood, my memories, my identity. You're still Jessica. You're still the woman I fell in love with. Finding out about your past doesn't change who you are now. But it changed everything else. What do we do now?" I asked. "We could go to the police. Press charges. For kidnapping that happened 25 years ago. There's no statute of limitations on kidnapping. Or murder." "Murder?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I told you my parents disappeared after Emma was taken. I said they searched for 3 years. Yes. That wasn't exactly true." My heart sank. What really happened? They were murdered. Shot execution style in their apartment. The police said it looked like a robbery, but nothing valuable was taken. When? 6 months after Emma was kidnapped. Right around the time someone named Robert and Linda Coleman moved to Portland with a 6-month-old daughter. The room went dark around the edges. "They killed your parents. The people who raised you killed my parents." I thought I was going to pass out. The couple who took Emma didn't just steal a baby. They eliminated the only people who would never stop looking for her. But why not kill you too? I was staying with my grandmother that night. If I hadn't been. He didn't need to finish the sentence. I ran to his bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left. When I came out, Marcus was on his laptop. "What are you doing?" "Research. I want to know everything about Robert and Linda Coleman before we go to the police." He'd already found their marriage certificate. Their address history. Employment records. All of it started 25 years ago, right after his parents' murder. "It's like they didn't exist before then," he said. "Because they didn't. They became Robert and Linda Coleman after they killed David and Sarah Mitchell." The evidence was overwhelming. The timeline was perfect. The DNA was conclusive. We had everything we needed to prove what had happened. Except courage. "I can't do it," I said suddenly. "I can't turn them in. Jessica, they raised me. They loved me. Whatever they did before, They've been good parents. They murdered my parents. They stole you from your real family. But they're the only family I've ever known. Marcus looked at me with such sadness. I understand. But Emma, my sister, deserves justice. My parents deserve justice. I'm not Emma. I don't remember being Emma. I've been Jessica my whole life. Your whole conscious life. But you had 6 months as Emma before they stole that from you. I was crying now. Ugly, desperate sobs. I know this is hard, Marcus said gently. But we have to do the right thing. And what happens to Jake? To his kids? When they find out their grandfather is a murderer? That's not your responsibility. They're innocent. They don't deserve to have their lives destroyed. Neither did my family. He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing something is right doesn't make it easier to do. We spent the next 5 hours talking, arguing, crying. Finally, as the sun was setting, I made my decision. We call the police. But I want to be the one to tell Jake first. And I want to see them one more time before. Are you sure that's safe? They've had 25 years to hurt me if they wanted to. I think one more visit will be okay. Famous last words. I called Mom and told her I needed to come home. That Marcus and I had something important to discuss with the family. She was excited. Probably thinking we wanted to talk about wedding details. The irony was crushing. We drove to Portland the next evening. I told Mom we'd arrive after dinner. The house looked the same as always. Warm light glowing from the windows. Dad's car in the driveway. But everything felt different knowing the truth. You sure about this? Marcus asked as we sat in his car. No. But we're doing it anyway. We walked to the front door. I used my key, like I had hundreds of times before. Mom, Dad, we're here. In the kitchen, sweetheart. They were cleaning up from dinner. Mom was loading the dishwasher. Dad was putting away leftovers. They looked so normal. So innocent. You two are just in time for dessert, Mom said, smiling. I made that chocolate cake you love. The same chocolate cake she'd made for my birthday every year since I could remember. How many of those birthdays were lies? Actually, we need to talk to you about something, I said. Something in my voice must have alerted them. Mom stopped loading dishes. Dad turned to face us fully. What's wrong? Mom asked. I looked at Marcus. He nodded encouragingly. We know about Emma Mitchell. The change in them was instant. Dramatic. Mom dropped the plate she was holding. It shattered on the kitchen floor. Dad's face went completely blank. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. I don't know what you're talking about, Mom finally said. But her voice was shaking. We have DNA results, Marcus said quietly. Jessica is Emma. Your daughter is my sister. Dad moved closer to Mom. A protective stance. That's impossible, he said. Jessica is our biological daughter. Then you won't mind if we call the police and let them sort it out, Marcus said. Now wait just a minute. 25 years, I said, my voice breaking. You let me believe you were my parents for 25 years. Mom started crying. We are your parents. We raised you. We loved you. We gave you everything. After you murdered her real parents, Marcus said. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. You don't understand, Dad said. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Robert, Mom warned. But Dad kept talking. We just wanted a baby. Linda couldn't have children. We'd tried everything. Adoption agencies wouldn't approve us. So you decided to steal one? We hired someone. A private adoption facilitator. He said he could get us a healthy infant, no questions asked. And you didn't think to ask where the baby was coming from? We didn't want to know. We just wanted to be parents. Mom was sobbing now. We never meant for anyone to get hurt. But people did get hurt, Marcus said coldly. My parents were murdered. That wasn't us. Dad protested. The facilitator said he'd handle everything. We didn't know he was going to kill them. We thought they'd given up the baby willingly. Found out later they'd been trying to find her. So you let them die to protect your secret. We didn't let anything happen. We didn't even know they'd been killed until years later. I felt like I was watching strangers. These weren't the people who raised me. What was his name? I asked. The facilitator. Jessica, don't. What was his name? Dad looked at Mom. Some silent communication passed between them. Vincent Torres, Mom whispered. Marcus pulled out his phone and started typing. He's dead, he said after a moment. Killed in a car accident 6 months after my parents were murdered. Convenient, I said. It wasn't like that, Mom pleaded. We loved you from the moment we saw you. We've been good parents. Built on a foundation of murder and kidnapping. We didn't murder anyone, but you knew. At some point, you figured out that your baby had been stolen. That her parents were dead. And you said nothing. The silence that followed was deafening. When? I asked. When did you figure it out? Another long pause. About 5 years in, Dad finally admitted. We saw a news story about the unsolved murders in Phoenix. Saw pictures of the victims. Realized they looked like us. And we panicked. We changed our names again. Moved here. Started over. You stole their identities too. We needed to disappear. While letting their son grow up thinking his parents abandoned him. Marcus's pain was written all over his face. We're sorry, Mom said. We're so sorry. But we can't change what happened. And turning us in won't bring them back. But it might help other families, I said. Other missing children. Jessica, please. Think about Jake. Think about your nephews. They need their grandfather. My nephews need to know their grandfather isn't a criminal. We'll confess, Dad said suddenly. We'll tell the police everything. But please, give us time to explain to Jake. To prepare the boys. I looked at Marcus. He shook his head slightly. How much time? I asked. A week. Just 1 week to get our affairs in order. To say goodbye. And then you'll turn yourselves in? Yes. I swear. It felt like a trap. But what choice did we have? 1 week, I said. But if you run, we won't run. We're too old to start over again. We left them standing in their kitchen, surrounded by the debris of their lies. The drive back to Seattle was quiet. We were both emotionally drained. Think they'll actually turn themselves in? Marcus asked. No. But I had to give them the chance. And if they run? Then we call the police and let them handle it. But deep down, I knew they wouldn't run. They were tired. Old. Ready for it to be over. 3 days later, I got a call from Jake. Jessica, something's wrong with Mom and Dad. They keep talking about how much they love us. Like they're saying goodbye. My heart sank. What do you mean? They asked me to come over last night. Spent hours telling me how proud they are of me. How grateful they are for their grandchildren. Maybe they're just feeling sentimental. And then Dad gave me a key to a safety deposit box. Said if anything happened to them, I should look inside. Did you? Not yet. Jessica, I'm scared. Are they sick? Is there something you're not telling me? I couldn't lie to him anymore. Jake, I need you to sit down. I told him everything. The DNA test. The photos. The truth about who I really was. He was silent for a long time after I finished. This is insane, he finally said. You're saying our parents are kidnappers and murderers? I'm saying the people who raised us made terrible choices 25 years ago. But they love us. They've always loved us. I know. That's what makes this so hard. What happens now? They promised to turn themselves in. If they don't, you'll call the police. Yes. Another long silence. I need to see this safety deposit box, Jake said. We met at the bank the next morning. Jake's hands were shaking as he used the key Dad had given him. Inside the box were documents, photos, and a letter addressed to both of us. Jake read it first. His face went white. What does it say? I asked. He handed it to me without speaking. My dear children, it began. If you're reading this, it means the truth has finally come out. We want you to know that every day we spent raising you was the happiest days of our lives. You gave us a purpose, a reason to be better people than we were before. We love you both more than words can express. We're sorry for the pain our choices will cause you. Please forgive us if you can. Please remember the good times if you can't. Love always, Mom and Dad. At the bottom, in Mom's handwriting, Jessica, you were loved from your very first breath in our home. Emma Mitchell was a lucky little girl to grow up as Jessica Coleman. We hope someday Marcus can forgive us for taking his sister, even though we gave her a beautiful life. I was crying before I finished reading. Inside the box were also copies of the original police reports from Phoenix, photos of David and Sarah Mitchell, and a photo of baby Emma that I recognized from Marcus's phone. But there was something else. Something that made my blood run cold. A second letter. This one addressed to the police. Jake opened it. It was a full confession. Every detail of the kidnapping, the murders, the identity theft. They'd signed it and had it notarized. They're not going to turn themselves in, I realized. They're going to. My phone rang. It was Mom. Jessica, sweetheart. I need you to know how much I love you. How proud I am of the woman you've become. Mom, where are you? At the house. With your father. Mom, don't do anything stupid. We can work this out. Get you lawyers. Figure out a way. There's no way out of this, honey. And we're too old to spend our last years in prison. Mom, please take care of Jake and the boys. Help them understand that we weren't monsters. Just broken people who made terrible choices. I will, but you need to. The line went dead. I called 911 while Jake drove us to Portland as fast as legally possible. But we were too late. We arrived to find police cars and an ambulance in the driveway. They'd taken sleeping pills. Lots of them. Dad was already gone. Mom died on the way to the hospital. Their final act was to spare us the trauma of a trial. To take their secrets with them. But they'd left behind the truth. All of it. In documents and confessions that would give Marcus and me the closure we needed. The investigation that followed confirmed everything we'd suspected. Vincent Torres had indeed been running an illegal adoption ring. He'd kidnapped children from loving families and sold them to desperate couples who didn't ask questions. Emma Mitchell was just one of dozens of children who'd been stolen and disappeared. Most were never found. The detective in charge of the cold case was Detective Sarah Price. She'd been working these cases for years. Your parents' confession helps us solve not just Emma's case, but potentially several others, she told us. Torres kept records. Hidden in a storage unit that no one knew about until now. How many children? 43 over a span of 8 years. I felt sick. Emma wasn't the only child whose life had been stolen. Are any of them still alive? We're working on that. Some families might finally get answers. It was something. Not enough to make up for what had happened, but something. The media attention was overwhelming. The story had everything reporters loved: family secrets, murder, kidnapping, identity theft. I had to take a leave of absence from work. Marcus and I couldn't go anywhere without being recognized. But slowly, the attention faded. Other stories took our place in the news cycle. And we were left to figure out how to rebuild our lives from the foundation up. The hardest part was knowing that the people I'd called Mom and Dad for 25 years were gone. Despite everything they'd done, they'd loved me. They'd raised me with kindness and care. They'd been criminals, but they'd also been my parents. Grieving them felt like a betrayal of Marcus and his family. But loving them felt like a betrayal of my grief. Marcus understood. Better than I'd expected. They stole you from me, he said one evening as we sat in his apartment. But they also kept you safe. They gave you a good life. I have to be grateful for that, even if I hate how it happened. How do we move forward from here? Together. As siblings. As family. But I don't remember being your sister. Then we make new memories. We can't get back the childhood we should have had. But we can have a future. It sounded simple. It wasn't. Learning to see Marcus as my brother instead of my fiancé was one of the hardest things I've ever done. We'd been in love, planning a wedding, building a life together. All of that was gone now. But we gained something too. We gained each other as family. Real family. Blood family. The connection we'd both been missing our entire lives. I met my grandmother, Marcus's grandmother, who was still alive at 89. She wept when she saw me. Said I looked exactly like Emma's mother at the same age. She'd never stopped hoping Emma would be found. Never stopped believing she was alive somewhere. I knew it, she kept saying. I knew my baby was out there. She died 3 months later. Peaceful and happy, knowing her granddaughter had come home. I also visited Marcus's mother in the care facility. She didn't recognize me. The dementia had taken too much of her mind. But when I showed her baby pictures of Emma, she smiled. Some deep part of her remembered. My baby, she whispered. My beautiful baby. It was heartbreaking and healing at the same time. The legal complications took months to sort out. Since Emma Mitchell was legally dead, I had to petition to have her declared alive again. Then I had to legally change my name back to Emma. But I kept Jessica too. Jessica Coleman Mitchell. A combination of who I'd been and who I was becoming. Jake struggled with everything. Learning that his parents were criminals destroyed something inside him. But he also had to think about his sons. They'd lost their grandparents and had to hear terrible stories about people they'd loved. We went to family therapy together. All of us trying to process trauma that spanned decades. Your parents weren't evil people, the therapist said. They were broken people who made evil choices. There's a difference. Does the difference matter?